Good day, everybody. Wolf Driver coming to you live once again, doing our VODcast podcast, live broadcast, interactive broadcast, where you can actually ask questions through the comment section of any social media you're following, you're watching this on. So I'm calling this kind of riding shotgun with the Wolf Driver. So I'm going to broadcast right here in about 2 seconds our trip from yesterday, our adventure at the Atlantic City Boardwalk in New Jersey. So it's the longest boardwalk in the world, is what they say, at 5.9 miles. It connects the Venture City and Atlantic City boardwalks. They connect together to make this 5.9 miles. So I'm going to get the show started. Don't forget, please comment whether you want to shout out, you just want to say, Wolf Driver, that's cool as can be. Wolf Driver, I hate you. Whatever your thoughts are of the day. I do this to so people can benefit from it and maybe get some ideas what they can do with their dogs, even if they're not sled dogs. So I'm going to start my video here as soon as I figure out how. And that's so this is where we're starting now, is the Atlantic City Boardwalk. We started in Venture City, and I'm not playing that part because it's cool, but it wasn't as quite as eventful as getting onto the Atlantic City Boardwalk, getting into Atlantic City, the heart of it basically, because you're going to see we're passing through a lot of the casinos. Some are the old casinos that aren't there anymore. They're just basically empty, abandoned buildings, for lack of a better description. And some that are hopping and popping, some that are new. There's some stores there. Of course, this is the off season because in the winter, you just have more of the locals. You have people that want to get away for a little more peace and quiet to go there and be by the beach, not necessarily bathe on the beach. You're not going to be able to this time of year, of course, unless you're doing a polar plunge. But there were people there walking on the beach just for some beautiful views. Because it was a beautiful day yesterday. We've got a pending snowstorm coming. So I call it the calm before the storm. You're going to see... Excuse me, just getting over a little bit of a cold here. And going out in the cold, it was kind of refreshing, for lack of a better description there. So we're all decked out, by the way. If you don't know me, I try to theme my electric dog sled on wheels. So I'm basically the only one in the world running this particular kind, really the only kind, of electric dog sled on wheels. And you can go to my website at any time and check it out. Dog Motorsports, dogmotorsports.com, wolfdriver.com. But if you don't see me, but you can sometimes see two wheels that are protruding to the right and left of me, because I'm on a trike, which is it's a recumbent trike, which is pretty much a bicycle that's got three wheels that's in a reclined position. And the purpose of that is it was designed for people as they age to help their knees and their back and still give them the ability to do some biking activity. It puts you in a more comfortable position. Most people think it is. Some people don't. So I took this design and I basically got rid of the pedal assembly because I have a motor and I have dogs. But the dogs don't need to propel it. That's the genius behind the whole design. So I took it because I'm low down to the ground and I'm kind of on the dog's level, like a sled would be essentially. You can't really stand on this design on a dog sled. You could stand on the back and you can assist the dogs. But the assistance of the dogs and actually the whole propulsion can be provided by an electric motor. So all this was designed to let me adventure with my dogs pretty much anywhere I want to go, that there's a bike trail, even a road, a dirt path, almost anywhere that someone could bike, essentially. Mountain biking is a little more challenging on this particular design, but I've got one that works for that too. So traditionally, these are called joring sports, okay? Sledding sports, bike joring, you might have heard of that. And the dogs are out, or a dog, even a single dog, is out in front on a tow rope, a gang line, a center line, different names for it. But basically, it's a rope out in front, which dogs tether to, even just one dog for some of these joring sports. And the dog assists the bike rider or the bike rider assists the dog. And it's a big sport, especially for people. They call it an urban style mushing because people that only have a dog or two can easily do that. You don't need a full sled set up, and one or two dogs are usually not going to pull a full sled. So I took that during sports, dog powered sports, another name for it. Sorry, I'm using all these names. And I basically made it on a metal gang line, if you will, or instead of a pole, instead of a rope, it's a pole essentially. And using these U-bars that I've designed, they're tandem U-bars, you see a dog in each one, it enables me to keep the dogs contained so they don't interfere with anybody else. And what I mean by that is if they're on a rope, usually if you have a lead sled dog, a lead dog, really well trained, he's going to keep she's going to keep the line out taut where the other dogs can't deviate left to right, and they're not going to get into anybody else's lane. They're not going to impede with any other traffic. But it's a lot to ask of that lead dog to do that the whole way. I mean, there's going to be times where it wants to go to the right, it wants to deviate to the left, and the dogs are going to follow it. Of course, you're supposed to be able to give that lead dog commands, G to the right, haul to the left, different variations of that, and different other commands to direct it where you want to go. But with my design, we don't need a lead dog, and there's no need to worry that the dog's going to deviate for any reason if it gets scared, because we're on a boardwalk and there's lots of people there, and there might be a loud noise. There might be someone running after us because they're really excited. You're going to see all these interactions with people coming up. It's going to be all kinds going on. So even a lead dog could be tried. Even the best of lead dogs could be a little tried for the kind of running, the kind of adventuring we're doing. So I'm calling it the electric dog sled on wheels. I call this whole concept dog motorsports. And what I'm doing here, you see is everybody wants to stop and get a picture and video. And I love that because I want to promote people being interactive with their dogs and doing tangible sports, doing not just looking at a dog sled team of, 21 dogs and saying, wow, I want to do that. And, it's kind of a pipe dream. Some people do it, obviously. But doing something and saying, wow, he's only got 4 dogs there, and I can do this with 1 dog because it's electric. I want to do that with my dog. So it's something that's possible to do for almost everybody. So with this whole setup, I call it adventure mushing. And I call it that because we're adventuring in different ways than you might imagine, not going to necessarily, we can go to remote areas, but I live on the East Coast in Maryland. We're in New Jersey in this video, or Atlantic City again, if you're just tuning in. But adventure mushing can happen anywhere. So we go to battlefields. You might have seen we just recently went to the Malvern Hill battlefield, which was supposedly one of the best preserved battlefields in Virginia. More on that later. But we can go through cities. I went through Washington, D.C. With no snow because, again, don't need a lead dog, don't need a whole mushing team, and don't need dogs that are really that well trained because they are kind of coerced into going the direction and maintaining their behavior for almost to be able to do this in almost all areas, like I said. But don't get me wrong, because some people say, oh, you're making your dogs pull you. Well, they don't have to pull at all because of the motor that I just explained. So, and I'll counter that by telling you can go on my website, alldogmush.com, and you can see my 14-pound Chinese Crested running in a different design. I haven't built this for her yet, but running in a different design along with my scooter where she can actually do it. And she can go with the sled dog, sled dog Huskies, or she can go by herself. I taught her by herself. So this is really cool, folks. I mean, it's just, it's almost surreal doing this the way we're doing it because you're in this kind of usually during the on season, a really populated area, a really exciting area, all the camaraderie going on, the stores and the casinos and the amusement piers and everything happening. And you got a sled dog team with you essentially. But a sled dog team in a different formation, like I said, where they don't have to pull. You can see the Ferris wheel in the distance. We'll be passing by. I think that might be the steel pier. I'm not as knowledgeable of the lay of the land there. I used to go there as a kid, and I used to go there as an adult. But I didn't spend a lot of time at the boardwalk, more time at the casino. Don't tell anybody, but the casinos back then. So it's really cool, but it gives people the idea they can do. And you can see someone in a scooter. He's almost racing me. This guy was in a scooter. He's like, you guys are going pretty quick. So we always abide by all the local laws and ordinances. In fact, somebody asked me, they were, I think, in a different boardwalk in New Jersey. I don't know. There's a few of them. There's Wildwood we did. And there's Cape May. There's some other ones besides Atlantic City where we're here today. And they like, are you allowed to have dogs on the boardwalk? And it's funny, but almost everywhere we go, this is cool. We're going to be going under. I think it's I don't know if it's the Caesars. There's a bridge there that goes to the beach, interior bridge. So we go right under it. But I don't know. We research everything we do. And the great thing, again, about dog motorsports, about the electric dog sled on wheels, is if dogs are allowed and bikes are allowed, we're usually allowed, because dogs sometimes will have prerequisites, like they need to be on a 4-foot leash. Well, my dogs are on shorter than a 4-foot leash because they need to be under your control at all times, which they are. A sled dog team, even though you have a great lead dog, still could deviate. Sorry, it's the Hard Rock we're going here. The Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, kind of epic view there. But yeah, they need to be in alignment with that, and there's certain prerequisites for bikes. But usually recumbent bikes, even though they're a little wider than your standard two-wheel bike, they're usually permitted in almost all areas. So, and we were fine. And actually, the only thing that happened to us was people were loving what we were doing, and they were cheering us on. And we go past, you'll see there's I'm going to call them school-age children, I don't know, 15 years old, 16-year-olds, and they're all in a group, and they were their teacher, headmaster, counselor, whoever was there. And when we went by, like, whoa! And I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like a lead dog might hear that. That's just on a gang line on a rope, and he might, whoa, what was that? And might get a little spooked or a little scared or whatever, and could deviate into somebody and cause an accident, God forbid. So with this design, they're contained, and it makes it possible for us to adventure like this. Keep in mind also, a lot of people say, well, you know, that they worry about the exercise or the health of the dog in this configurement. And no need to worry. I've thought about everything. I've been running dogs for almost 30 years. So the way the harness system is set up and all the tethers and everything is spring-loaded, like on a gang line, where the dogs are hooked to their lines, they'll have usually some sort of shock-absorbing lines. That's what I have built into the what I call the mushing bar and the U-bars. So actually, they are spring-loaded, everything on there. So very similar to a sled, to a dog sled, basically a dog sled on wheels. Additionally, because of the harness design and how they're tethered on 2 points, they don't get the range of movement, and they don't get the angle that they would need to pull like a dog sled, like on a dog sled, like wearing an X-back harness or a racing harness or more of a dog sledding harness. So this harness is designed to give them a certain amount of reach and to comfortably distribute the weight of what they're going to assert in it, against it, with it, etc. So it keeps them perfectly safe and healthy and conditioned. I complement this electric dog sled on wheels, this kind of e-mushing, I call it, by doing other dog sports. And they can power this because the harness, they can propel this bike if they choose to. All my bikes, they can't. All my designs, they can't. Sometimes it's more about resistance running, and they wear a resistance harness, which is a canine sport called dog roading. Sorry, hard to explain all this, but they can do limited pulling. I actually call it pushing here. So it's push to mush. So we're taking a break here. So we take a break. You can see Cyan. She don't want to take a break. She's the dog standing up on the back right. So she's just like, Dad, I want to go. And we were stopping, I don't know, my co-pilot, I don't have the audio on here. My co-pilot is a guy who kind of sometimes rides point. So what I mean by riding point, he'll ride ahead of me. He's now actually passing me on my right. He'll ride ahead of me a lot of times and make sure everything's clear, make sure there's no possible hindrances, make sure we won't be intruding on anybody. Sometimes there's mobility issues people have and they need bigger wheelchairs, whatever the case may be. He'll make sure everything is copacetic pretty much so we can abide by all the rules and we can be as considerate as possible to everybody else on the trail. He'll also sometimes ride behind me. Sometimes he'll set a pace for us. He'll film me using different apparatuses. When we can drone, he'll fly a drone. So all kinds of prerequisites comes into being a Wolf Driver co-pilot. So if you have any comments or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them down in the social media you're watching us on, even if you just want to shout out. To the right is the beach, and again to the left is pretty much the heart of Atlantic City. We're getting a little past the casinos here, it looks like now. And what's really cool is it turns into almost what I'm going to call the seawall. So it's kind of like a wall they build maybe to keep the ocean from flooding the area, whatever. But the actual boardwalk turns into concrete. I think they still consider it part of the boardwalk. And you can ride that area and you turn around and go back down the boardwalk. So we did about 12 miles. Rod, do we have any comments or questions?
Yeah, we got 2 comments.
Okay, so just real quick, I'm going to take a break here. And the first one is, so Marcus Belcher. Hey, Marcus, thanks so much for asking. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. How did you make it? So, okay. So you can go to alldog.com, alldog.com. That's a page on my dogmotorsports.com website, but it's easier to remember, and that's why I made it alldog.com. Basically what I did was take a recumbent trike that was already motorized. I took off the pedal assembly. So the pedal assembly slides into the frame of the bike or the trike. And I designed a bar, pretty much a standard aluminum bar. Went through a lot of iterations of this, from material-wise, length-wise, etc., and found that aluminum was going to be best. It's certainly rigid enough to put up to the dog's abuse, but light enough that it won't, like if you put a steel bar on there, it's going to make the bike go like that if I'm not sitting in it. It's going to tip it forward because most of these recumbent trikes, they're 3 wheels. There's recumbent quads, which are 4 wheels, but then you get into a width issue. They're usually more expensive. It's not necessary to have them, and that could still tip it forward. So took an aluminum bar and a standard size aluminum bar that was readily available at one of our local metal shops. I'm in the Baltimore area, so it's fairly, there's a lot of places to find these kinds of material and a lot of industry, etc. And then the harder part was making those U-bars. So because I had to find, I've got a welder on my team, but aluminum welding is a real specialized art. And he could do it, but actually, for the first prototypes, he was doing it. We were using steel at the time, which is a lot easier. So we were bending steel, and we put it on pretty much a centerpiece that would fit into, I didn't bring them with me, I should have, to an upright piece that slides over the aluminum bar. So it makes everything adjustable and collapsible for transport. So we usually take a trailer, and I've got a big Sprinter van, so everything can fit in. But even this bar assembled can take a lot of room because the bar's about 9.5 feet, I believe. And that gives you enough room to slide it into the, I'm going to call it the receiver hitch. And all this is on my website of the trike. So it's cantilevered, so there's no weight on the dogs. And then the U-bars slide over that. And depending on what dogs you may be running, how they're feeling, what the situation is as they age, you can slide them back or forward. But this 9.5 bar gives pretty much all the length in between that I'm going to need for my dogs. And some of these dogs are pretty lengthy, pretty long. So should be good for most standard size Huskies to be able to get two in front of each other like I have running 4. And it's all decked out. We colorized it for Valentine's Day week yesterday, but it's decked out with the pool noodles, and you'll see they're called Holy Rollers. They're pretty much dog toys, play toys, but they're actually, that's how I knew what they were to use them, because they actually have a lot of holes in them, like they're called, and they give the ability to put it over some of the protruding parts that provide some of the spring-loaded aspects I was talking about. So they're decorative, but they're actually, between the pool noodles and the Holy Roller balls, if something ever touches the dog, it's perfectly cushioned to the maximum, basically. And when we handle them, it helps us too, because we don't mess up any of the springs, and we don't, basically we can hold the U-bars without having to grip hard, because the pool noodles thicker, cushioned foam, etc. So that's the method behind all that. And the center bar, depending on your dogs, you might want to actually, you can put foam over that too, but that makes that you'd have to do each time, because everything slides on and off. We used to foam wrap it. We just thought, if the dogs rub on the bar, it would be easier, but I've never had any bad vibes from the dogs rubbing on it. There hasn't been any hair loss, and there hasn't been any impediment on their movement, basically. So hope that answers your question. Any questions you have regarding that, always comment on a lot of my social media feeds, wherever you're watching me at. And I usually don't respond to direct messages, Messenger, etc., because it's just too hard for me to go through all them. But when I see in the comment section, I can address it further if you have any further questions. I know you're going to want to know about dimensions and everything. That's why I mentioned the roughly 9.5 feet. And I need to post those, more of a schematic, because remember, I don't sell anything. I do all this for just to the betterment of all dogs, hopefully to share with everybody and give people ideas. And actually, I know one girl that built almost the exact thing from seeing what I had. She wasn't a welder and couldn't really weld, so she was using and I've done this before for some of our designs, use chairs, like aluminum chairs outdoors, because of the way they bend. That's almost the perfect width. I think we were making the width of the 2 bars 35.5 inches. By the way, we're riding past a big high rise to the left, which I think was, I couldn't remember if that was a casino or just a condominium building, but it's pretty cool. We're getting on the outskirts of the Atlantic City Boardwalk there, as you can see, approaching the seawall area that I was telling you about. We get to one spot that's really tight, and needed my co-pilot, because when you turn, now I'm talking about a 9.5 foot bar, adding the bike to it, you're talking about being roughly 18 feet long, something like that, maybe 16 feet long. So the only problem can be is when you have to make sharp turns. I've never not been able to do it. So we're still within a pretty good spec, these dimensions. But the bike will come apart even on the fly with the dogs attached, the whole design. So that I've had to do because I've had to turn around in a tight spot. So I had to make a complete U-turn, basically, because a tree was down or the trail was closed or something happened. This is a seawall. You can see to the right. And actually, I think I'm making one of the turns I'm talking about, and you can see the rails. And one of my dogs, Nikita, she got a little concerned because as we approached making this turn, she could see over the side, and I was trying to get her to go as close to the fence as possible. Couldn't go over, but she didn't recognize that in her mind. So she laid down. She's like, "Dad, I'm not going any further." And that's when I need assistance from my co-pilot to make it through. And I think this might have been the turn, in fact. You can see, and to the left is a staircase. So you can see I'm trying to cut it as wide as possible, but it just it wasn't happening. So some people say, well, why don't you make the bar on a pivot? So it pivot in or pivot out. And the problem with that is when you start adding pivots and you start adding lots of pressures that haven't been fully engineered. We've engineered it to our capacity and it works great. But you're talking about a lot of stress and a lot of mathematical, trying to figure out, almost like you're designing a car. So that's not able to happen with us. You can see, so Nikita was a little scared, so I was comforting her, and I realized, hey, I need my co-pilot here, just because the angle, she wasn't going to go any further towards that railing, and we were just a little bit short, a little bit too long. So my co-pilot comes here, and he will assist me. And Nikita's fine as long as we're not going forward. She's like, I'm not going towards that rail, Dad. And I'm standing, actually, and I'm just guiding the steering wheel. That's why I'm standing in there. And he's pretty much maneuvering the back end. Now we've got to be, once we cleared the front dogs, I have to be worried about the rear pole, the rear dogs, not them, but the actual U-bar, because that's wider than they are. It's kind of like a roll cage. It's going to protect them, too, in scenarios like this. But I have to clear that out, make sure I can make the turn, and then we have to get my bike around it. And once we do that, we're back in business. So now, if that would have been any tighter, we would have separated that. We can move the dogs with it all assembled, or we can take just one bar off. It's really versatile and modular, so it works really well. And then we're back on what I'm calling the seawall. To the right is the ocean. So hope that answers your questions. Rod, give me another one. Okay, back testing needs help. So Keith Bobo, Keith Bobo. Hi Keith, how are you? I recognize your name. I think we've interacted before on my channel. So the backcasting needed to see why they had stopped. Yeah. So Keith's talking about cyan. Exactly. So on a sled dog team, you might have heard this before if you've done any mushing, that if you're not the lead dog, the view never changes because you're always looking at the dog's butts. So one of the reasons the U-bars are designed actually a little wider than they theoretically need to be is because it gives the dogs the ability, and you'll see this in some of my videos, where the rear dogs will ride on the outside pretty much, and the front dogs will ride more on the inside because they can all then see. The rear dogs can see around them. And that's what, when we stopped, yes, Cyan stepped up on the bar so she could see ahead of Lola that's in front of her. So that's very true. Seeing where they're going, they can pick up all these scents because their noses are so sharp, and they can are so powerful. So when they pick up a scent, oh, I know there's a squirrel there, but I can't see it. And then they want to see all around. And sled dog formations create a lot of that competitiveness. And that's one of the driving factors of dogs, pretty much. You're using their competitiveness or their to train them, to work them, to run them, to inspire them, basically, to motivate them. So it's pretty interesting. And if you understand all these, all the different aspects with the dogs, especially from breed to breed, what drives them? This breed's more prey driven. This herding breed is more herding, does more herding, etc. This protection breed wants to protect. What drives them? You can train them better. So with Huskies, because they're so independent and they're very prey driven, if you can use some of those aspects, you can make them better companions for you. Because a lot of people say, oh, I got a husky, he won't listen to nothing I do. Well, that's where you got to sharpen your pencil and say, why won't he listen? And how can we make this more of a game or more of an exercise that he will want to listen, and turn that into what I want to train him for? So it's a deep topic, but it's really cool. Again, we're on the seawall here. Now you can start to see to my right, no pun intended there, the ocean. And when we get down to the end here, we'll turn around and we're going to go back the way we came. But the particular area that I got a little bottleneck there where it was tight, when I make the left turn this time, before it was a right turn, it goes a lot easier. Still needed a little help. Any more questions, Rod?
Yeah.
Okay. Cheryl Coverduck. Great to see you, Cheryl. So Cheryl says, She can be a co-pilot back rider. Nice colors. So thanks so much, Cheryl. Thanks always for all your support. I truly appreciate it and enjoy you tuning in here and adding some nice comments and having a good time. So it's funny because when I first started doing this, I started, it's a good time to talk about it, on a Seiko cart. So the Seiko cart is kind of similar to what I'm doing here. A Seiko cart has metal bars also. These metal bars go around the dogs totally, or on top of the dogs. And again, they're spring loaded, no weight on the dogs. And they have a 4-point harness system. And they have it so you can teach the dogs the commands. That's why these systems work really well in training lead sled dogs, because the dogs essentially have to go in the direction the bike goes or the dog cart goes, and they have to stop when you stop, and they can feel when the brake's off that they can go. So you can teach commands as you're going to the left and the bike's gently, or the dog cart's gently nudging them. You can say haul. So they realize, oh, haul means to the left. Haul, and I'm going to go to the left. So from them getting gently nudged, they can learn, oh, that means to the left, haul. When they see, whoa, and you stop the bike, you stop the dog cart, putting the brake on, they can say, oh, whoa means we're going to stop. So anticipation, they don't have to, because they do that to train lead sled dogs. These guys aren't going to be on a rope usually, like a lead sled dog, or more of doing dog drawing sports. So they're not going to need it as much. But those commands really come in handy for other aspects. And I was explaining how training can be multidimensional. So by using motivational aspects of a breed-specific trait and training a dog, well, those traits can be trained for other aspects for the companionship of your dog. And same with teaching the commands, even though I don't necessarily, the way I'm going to run these dogs, most of the time, they don't need to know the commands. It's really nice when they can anticipate them. And it's nice for if I have them off leash, for instance. So for other aspects, they know, oh, Dad wants me to go to the left, etc. So Cheryl, great to see you. But in the Seiko cart, so I used to have other riders. I would take my mother-in-law along because she loved me doing this, and I would take my little niece, who at the time we raised my niece from about, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old, till she was 18. And she grew up with me learning and doing all the dog-powered sports and dog sports I was doing. And she would go with me and ride in the Seiko cart, because the Seiko cart had a passenger and had a platform. So I could be on the back and I could kind of steer, and I could control the brake, and I could also assist the dogs that didn't have a motor with my foot. And everybody just loved riding along. Can we go dog sledding today, Uncle Billy? And like, I say Bill Hellman, but everybody calls me Billy because I'm the youngest of 5. But my mother-in-law loved it. It was really great. So my next part of life, after I left the Seiko cart, I started using these tandem bikes where I did have a backseat driver, a co-pilot, and their job, because I was running the dogs on the side then, was to watch the rear dogs because they were a little out of my peripheral vision. So the backseat rider would watch them and, of course, get out of the bike if we had something. Basically do what my co-pilot does now, and that's where the term co-pilot came. So thanks, Cheryl. Sorry for the long dissertation. Anything else, Rod? Okay. So Linda Hickey. Hey, Linda, great to see you. Thanks so much for the great question. Linda asked me what I feed my dogs. So I started off many years ago doing a raw diet. And it's, diet is very personal with dogs. I've had even many discussions with veterinarians over the years. What do you like best for diet? And it's always, diets seem to be always evolving. For me, I got into this raw diet, and they call it BARF, bones and raw food. Sounds lovely, right? And it's kind of BARF I used to make it. So I used to take offal, which is like hearts and chicken hearts and beef livers and all the stuff that you're like, I don't eat that stuff. But it's actually a certain percentage is healthy and should be in the dog's diet. Used to take that kind of stuff, and used to take, they're called organ meats, all fail meats, and used to take other proteins, beef, chicken, whatever, and I used to mix it together. The hardest part of the diet was balancing it. So you take, to make the nutrients biologically available, they would say, you'd have to pulverize some of it. And I'm talking like vegetation. So we would need a juicer. And instead of feeding the juice, you would feed the pulp. That would be mixed in, or that would be part of the diet. So I used to make this pretty complicated diet. By the way, we're watering the dogs here, which you see on the video. Used to make this pretty sophisticated diet and add nutrients that were vitamins, whatever. And it was a lot of work, and I wasn't always sure if I was hitting everything I needed to. I kept doing my research. Took a lot of time, and it took a lot of cleaning up, which my wife didn't always like. It was a mess. But the dogs, and bones and raw food, so they would get bones in a certain capacity, and they would, whether they would actually eat raw chicken bones. And I know people will be like, oh my God, you can't feed them that. Well, the raw bones, when they're raw, they're not rubberized. So they have less of a chance of piercing anything along the dog's digestive system. And when they expel it, less of a chance of messing up their bowels, etc. So, I mean, put it this way, I went to, I would board my dogs back then. I had 2 huskies. And when I would take them, my dogs are always my children. When I would take them to board them, they would have to stay on the raw diet. I know nobody's going to sit in the kitchen and do everything I was cooking up. So I would just give them, like, I would say on this day, feed them 4 turkey wings, whatever it was, or this day, maybe a half a chicken, whatever the case. So they said they would throw the turkey wings in there, and they would gather around the people that worked at the boarding facility because they were amazed. It was like throwing raw meat into a tiger's cage. A dog would take it and crunch, 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 and then swallow it. And it worked really well for me. Never really had any issues. At one point, one of my dogs got a digestive issue because of shark cartilage. He was a cancer survivor, and I treated him through radiation treatment, or et cetera. And it was a shark cartilage, which caused a digestive issue. So it wasn't any of the raw bones. The cartilage, I didn't know, but that cartilage, for whatever reason, couldn't be digested. I thought the shark aspect was going to keep him cancer-free, but it caused more problems than it was worth. So I had a good experience through all the way I would feed them the bones, and all the way they call it barfing them. But after that digestive issue, I got a little gun shy. And the particular veterinarian, this was a board certified surgeon. It cost me a pretty penny, and no, I'll spend anything to save my dog's lives. Of course I would. But the surgeon, when I say board certified, because it's like a board certified surgeon's on call at the 24-hour clinic, and they can X amount of dollars to save your dog, or to at least try to save them, because he had a bowel obstruction from the shark cartilage, which was not a part of the bones and raw food diet, so don't get me wrong. But after talking to that surgeon, and he was like, he's like, I don't know if it was a shark cartilage, but everything was jammed up in the dog, and I would never feed a dog a bone. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, what do you mean? That's what they would eat in the wild? About, all my knowledge. I'm going to argue with a board certified surgeon. Not going to happen. So he's like, I'm just telling you, I've seen this before and I wouldn't do it. Blah, 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 blah. You want to feed them bones and raw food? Just eliminate the bones, basically. So after further consultation with my veterinarian, he's like, no veterinarian's going to ever tell you to feed the dog a bone. So understand that. He's just saying what most veterinarians are going to say. Well, at that point, I was rethinking everything, and I'm like, I really like the aspect of the raw food, of feeding raw foods. It just feels healthier, and everything most of the experience with it, the dogs, I mean, when they would go get their checkups, their coats looked so good and their teeth were awesome and everything about them. They didn't have any skin issues, any zinc deficiencies, any problems that are more common in huskies. And I'm like, how can I get this without all the work, without worrying about these bones, without all the situations that go along with feeding them the way I was? And I found commercially available. Now, they just started off back then, raw foods that were frozen. And the bones in those raw foods were minced, were crushed. Actually, when I say minced, I mean really, really small, like it's going to pass through the system no matter what, even a small dog. So, but the veterinarian that did the surgery was saying that, if you get something in there, sometimes those bones, because they don't digest, they just go through the system, can still create a blockage because if they start backing up and they start accumulating together. But I felt like this was a good medium to get, and it was going to be easier to do, more costly, but just a good in between. So at that point, there was only a few companies that produced this barf food, and started feeding them, and I did wonderful. And I used that for many years. And as bones and raw food, as these raw frozen diets have become more popular, there's a lot of companies out there that make them now. And I actually take from a bunch of different companies, the top companies from my research, and I mix a lot of different proteins. So one company adds goat milk, and I feel like goat milk's a great aspect. But there's another company that uses the vitamins, and everything they use are, I think they say human grade, they're not synthetic. So some dogs aren't going to absorb synthetic vitamins. So the human grade or the natural vitamins are going to absorb better. So I use all the different top dog foods, raw foods that I feel are top, and use all them with different proteins, because I feel like huskies in general are usually picky eaters. And when you're working them, they become less picky because you're burning calories and they're establishing their metabolism and they're working up their appetite. But if by varietizing their diet, by giving them pork and giving them even let's see, it's I'm forgetting. Sorry, emu, pork, duck, rabbit, a lot of some of the more exotic proteins, and mixing that. When I say mixing it, one night giving them duck, the next night turkey, maybe the next night pork and rabbit, and turkey and sardine, all different flavors. I feel like it really entices them. It's a lot of work for me getting all these different proteins and researching it and seeing which are good, well-produced, what I feel well-produced foods. But it's really been beneficial, I believe, to the dogs. So I gauge a diet, the benefits of it, by how the dog's feeling performance-wise, how they're aging, mobility-wise, and health issue-wise, etc. So I've had good luck with this. Sorry again for the long dissertation, but there's a lot to say. I've got more on my website. You can always go to wolfdriver.com. You can ask me particular dog foods that I use. Sometimes I'll change. Always on the comment sections of the social media, etc. So hope that answers that. It was long, I know, but I really like to cover all my bases. By the way, we're coming back here in the video on the Atlantic City seawall, and we're going to get back into the boardwalk. And it was so funny, again, because a lot of the people that we passed originally coming down when we were going down the boardwalk, coming back, are different people now. And they're like, it's just a whole different show. So thanks for that great question, Linda. And thank you for all your support. Rod, any more?
Yes, sir. One more.
Okay. So this is from Christy Koronek Hatter. I know I'm not saying that right, but I appreciate the question. So what got you started in running dogs and making bikes? Thank you so much for the great question, Christy. So I Got my first husky in about 95. Loved him. He was a fluff ball, all white, blue eyes. And just, I mean, my wife and I were like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I always wanted huskies because it goes back to when I was a kid and other family members had them, extended family. And I'm just like, I want a husky, but never had the proper land and never had the proper time to have one. So I get my first husky because we got a house and we got a little bit of land, and cute as can be. His name was Czar, Czar. So I get Czar, and he's a great dog, and things are going well as he's a puppy. Now he's starting to get towards 6 months, 9 months, and he's like becoming a lot of dog. He's got a lot of energy, and I'm like, what's this dog want? So I start walking him on further walks, and I get home, and he's like, what was that? It's like, that wasn't nothing. And he's jumping all over and he's raising hell in the house and wreaking havoc everywhere. I'm like, what the heck can I do? Well, at the time, I was in the pet business, dry goods, at a distributorship, mostly towards reptile and small animal, bird, etc. And I was in Atlantic City where we filmed this video, and at what they call a pet trade show. So we would display our products. Stores would come and buy the products from us, and they would take them and sell them to their customers, the end users. Well, at that pet trade show, I saw a device called a Springer, and it was a bike. It would fit almost any bike, and it was a big spring essentially that could hook a dog to, and the dog couldn't pull you over because the spring would absorb the dog's pull, and it would give you the chance to ride your dog safely on a bicycle. It's like $50. I said, I'm buying that. So my wife said, are you going to really do that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it with Czar. So I get home, and Czar's his typical self, and I put him on the bike, and I wasn't an avid bike rider, but I was, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 years old, and I'm like, I can ride a bike. So, and especially since it's got this big spring and he can't really move me too much, I'm going to do it. Took him around the block. We came back, and he was like the best dog in the world. He was like mellow and chill, and I'm like, did I do too much? Did I hurt him? And I checked his paws, and I looked at him, and he ate his meal, later that day, regular, and he seemed to be fine. Well, the next day, he's barrel of energy again. And I'm like, here I go again. Took him again. I got home, and it started working out that I had to go further to start tiring him out further. But it started to become a pattern, exercise we do, and it started to become kind of fun. And I'm like, you know what? My wife said, let's go to the bike trail with him. You ride him on your bike, and I'll ride my bike alone, and we'll go down the trail. And all of a sudden, Czar loved it, because now on the bike trail, it wasn't the road. On the bike trail, there were other animals that crossed the area. There were other scents in the ground and other dogs he would see. And this is fun, Dad. So he was having a ball. And I'm like, this is really cool. This is all I need to do to give this dog his happiness. So then I got my second dog. I'm like, I gotta make a team here. So I get my second dog, his name was Hudson, another husky. And I didn't know much about dogs back then. And I put the two dogs together, and they weren't happy with each other, fighting and all that. I had to figure this out, but it all worked out. And I actually had them biking together beautifully. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do something more. What can I do? And that's where I got involved with the Seiko cart. I found one. There wasn't the internet back then, or at least that I could use. Found like in the back of a magazine, someone's advertised Seiko cart. I'm like, what's this? It's a dog cart? What is a dog cart? And I think it was like $800, $900. And it was a lot of money to me back then, especially. But I'm like, I'm going to try this. The dogs can actually pull this cart. It's made for them. Huskies can do this. The weight ratio for me, and you can help your dog along by using your foot, standing on the back platform and kicking if you need to. And I got the Seiko cart, and a friend of mine was a really well-known dog trainer, not with sled dogs, not with dog sports like this, but more of Schutz and its protection work. And he's like, hey, Bill, I can help you with this. We talked about it. He said, go ahead and buy it. So I did go ahead and buy it, and we hooked the dogs up to it. It was like second nature. They just took off. So I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world, because I can take them to the trail. they can actually pull now. On the bike, they can pull to a certain extent. On this Seiko cart, they can pull 100%. They can pull, and when it's too much for them, I can help them. Wasn't motorized, wasn't anything like I was doing now, but it was really cool. And I mean, I did this for years, up and down bike trails, and they were the happiest dogs in the world. When I got my third dog, I wanted to expand further. That's when I started motorizing stuff. Some of the bikes I were using, the 2-seater bikes, were motorized. The Seiko cart was never motorized at that point. Later in life, I did it with other dogs. But I'm like, there's got to be another way to do this. So let me keep thinking and expanding my team, getting out to 4 dogs like I did. And all these bike trails we were going to, they were so exciting. And they were opening up in a whole new world to me of adventure, nature, and these beautiful views, kind of seeing other people out there, chatting with them a little bit. The most important thing was the smile on my dog's face, their happiness. And my wife and I would go around some. And I wanted to go further and further, and she didn't want to travel that far. So that's when I got some of the guy friends that I have involved. And I'm like, hey, you want to go down towards, Virginia? You want to go to Pennsylvania just to run the dogs and to see a new area? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. But some of them didn't have a bike. And I'm like, no problem. I'm going to get a 2-seater bike built. So you can come with me and we can take all the dogs and we can do this. And it started becoming this I don't know, this cool thing to do. And that's how I do it. When I find something I like, I want to always do it to the nth degree, do it the best I can, maximize, or certainly the dog's experience, maximize my experience, and keep everybody happy around me so they keep wanting to go and do this. And lo and behold, 30 years later, we're in Atlantic City on the Boardwalk here. And it's funny because here we are making this turn again and just riding along. So what I do now, and I've actually done a professional sled dog tour with a full sled dog team in the Canadian Rockies, and I've done dog sledding with my dogs, just a couple dogs, one of my generations, and I've done ski joring and bike joring and everything in between. So this is the ultimate what I do right now. I mean, this is my best design. It gives the dogs the best adventuring, or opens up the most doors to adventuring further and further, access in places we couldn't go before, and pretty much maintenance free, for lack of a better description, with least amount of training, because they don't really need any training to do this. Kind of natural to them, and just makes life so wonderful. So that's why I share everything here, because took me 30 years, and all 30 years, I loved every moment of it. I mean, there's not a moment I would trade for anything else. It was all the whole evolution process of what I do was worth it. And I'm not saying this is my final design. There's some variations of this you might have seen me do to access different areas. My whole thing is I want to be able to go almost anywhere with my dogs. So I want them to be able to be with me and to adventure and to explore, and all these different bikes and different ways I do it give us those opportunities. So that's wolf driving. That's what I call that's wolf driver in a nutshell, literally. It's a passion, and in life, if we can get a passion, we can identify a passion we have and make that passion obtainable. I mean, everyone wants to be I'm not saying everybody, but we'd love to be a billionaire, being able to, live any way we want, eat the finest food, travel the place we want. There's dreams and there's possibilities that are more reality. I'm not saying, the sky's the limit always. I never want to tell anybody you can't do something, but this is really feasible from one dog to a small team of 4 dogs like I have. If I got much bigger here, by the way, then it would be a little too much to travel the way I like to travel. When you start traveling with a lot of dogs, a lot of times you need what they call like dog boxes, trailers, and the dogs are kind of in their own enclosures, but they're basically on a trailer, not inside the cabin with you traveling. And I like the small team because my dogs are inside the van with me. They're in their own crates. And we can still keep it intimate and that pet human relationship, not all working dog. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with all working dog, but not a constant working dog. So we can still have the best of all worlds, essentially. And that's the exact medium I'm looking for, the exact lifestyle. So one more time, Atlantic City Boardwalk here. This is the outskirts of it. It's actually, I don't know if that's quite, it was a concrete on the seawall part, as I mentioned, but we're going to get back onto the boards. The boardwalk was in wonderful shape. Didn't have to worry about any issues of dogs getting caught in anything, getting soft wood, getting splintery wood. Everything seemed to be really well maintained. There was a section or so that they were repairing. It was cordoned off really nicely. So this made our third boardwalk appearance. We did Ocean City a few weeks ago in the snow or in the ice, which is a little difficult to navigate here on the boardwalk here. We did Wildwood, which was gorgeous, I think last week maybe, and that went really well, and Atlantic City went really well. Atlantic City was, again, for the time of year, really crowded. That's because you have casinos, relatively speaking, because you have casinos and you have so much other stuff going on. Wildwood was not crowded. It was more of a ghost town, and Ocean City was kind of a ghost town too. Ocean City, Maryland, that is. So I've got time for a couple more questions or comments if anybody has any. Rod, do we have anything?
One more.
Okay. So Christy Coronac Hatter. Hey, Christy, I know you just asked a question. Recommendations for a unit to use with a single Alaskan Malamute. So great question. And a lot of people say, I have just one dog. What can I do? With one dog, I would bike. Now I'm older now, so I can't say I would definitely use a two-wheel bike. It's easiest and least expensive to get involved with one bike. Again, I don't like them out in front on a single bike. I like them on the side still today using a device like a Springer. So you can go on Amazon and look up Springer dog jogger. They're like $100 now. It'll retrofit to almost any bike, and you can have an electric bike, you can have regular bike. It doesn't matter. If you wanted to go up one more notch, I would get a recumbent trike like I'm riding here, and I know you can't see it in the video. So a recumbent trike, again, it puts you more in a relaxed position. It makes it easy for you to bike, and you don't have to put this pole on like I have with one dog. You can put your dog on the side. So your dog, when you could attach with the Springer also on that, on most recumbent trikes. There are places you can go to I think it's dogpoweredscooter.com. I believe his name is Mark Schutte, Mark Schutte, I believe. Because I've dealt with Mark. He's a great guy. And he invented the dog-powered scooter, and I've used those as well. He's got a U-bar system too, which puts the one dog on the side. Now, he also sells, I believe, trikes for one or two dogs. It puts them a little behind you, which I'm not as happy with. I'd rather be in front of you. It's easy to customize depending on the design of the trike to get them there. The only issue with the dogs on the side is in a trike, sometimes you're a little wide. Now, with one dog being on one side, it's not going to be as bad. If you wanted to go similar to what I'm doing, you can easily do it with one dog and keep yourself narrow, but it's going to be more fabrication. So dog-powered scooter, the guy's name is Mark Schutte. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Check out some options he's got. The Seiko cart, if you wanted to spend some money, they're outrageously expensive now. I mean, there's something like, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I was the North American distributor for Seiko Car. I love them so much. Back in 2000 or so, about 20 some years ago, maybe 2010. About 2000. And I love them. I think they're great. And one dog out in front, that's what it's made for. The issue I have besides the expense is it's not motorized. One dog, your Alaskan Malamute, somewhere 50 pounds, I'm going to assume on the average. can pull about 150 pounds. So the Seiko cart itself probably weighs 60 some pounds. Depending on your weight, if you go beyond 150 pounds, the dog may or may not be able to pull you. I mean, three times their weight, they should be able to pull comfortably. Possibly more, depending on your dog and the conditions. But keep in mind, that's usually on level terrain. So if you start going uphill, you're going to definitely have to help. Now, with the Seiko cart, there's no pedal, so you can't really pedal to help. You have to get off. There's a rear platform you can stand on, and you can kick like a musher would kick. That is really, I love the Seiko cart. You can go online. Once in a while, they come up on eBay. They come up on Facebook Marketplace. You can find used Seiko carts for $1,000, and they're just as good as the new ones. They are four-wheel, but they're still narrow enough. I used to use my Seiko cart. It used to fit in I think it was a small bed pickup truck, because the way it's designed to be compact, relatively speaking, and pretty much portable. The bars attached to it after you get to your destination. So you can always comment, ask me on social media if you have any further questions if I didn't cover it. I did see they were having a big sale on Seiko carts. On Caesar Milan, they had the Dog Whisperer. They had a model for him. I don't know. It's like $5,000 down to $2,500 or $3,000 at the time. That was going back a few months ago, but it's really cool. Right now, the Seiko carts have really thin wheels. They're good for a lot of bike trails. And most, keep in mind, when I say, the dog pulling you, most bike trails are relatively level. So it's not like you're going to be fighting up a mountain hill and you're going to have to really help your dog. Being kind of level, depending on your weight, one dog can do it. Should be able to. But that's my recommendations off the top of my head. So hope that answers your questions. Excuse me. So at that point, been running here for an hour. This was just epic yesterday. I can't talk about it enough. You can see the Ferris wheel in the distance coming up again. And we're going to get into the heart of the Atlantic City Boardwalk here in a few minutes. We're going to be wrapped up by then, but I will post the video coming up in the next few days, and you'll be able to hear all of my narration different than today. This will be, a blow-by-blow description of what's going on and all the interactions we had with people along the boardwalk and my communications. I call it a wingman, my guy who's in the van who drops us off at one point and usually picks us up at another point, watches us virtually basically through GPS tracking to see if we need help, and we use an LTE cell phone kind of walkie-talkie to communicate. I'm pointing to my chest because then on my other side, I wear a walkie-talkie for my co-pilot, who in this case is riding around on another bike, kind of taking pictures of me, clearing the way. When I say clearing the way, just if I need to know anything's ahead of me or behind me, he will keep me informed, etc. So you can hear all of what's going on kind of behind the scenes, views and sounds and everything else. And it's pretty interesting. So at least I think it is. I'm Wolf Driver. Great being with you today. Sorry about being a little hoarse here. Look forward to hopefully being with you next week, seeing where we adventure to. We're expecting some snow. One thing I did want to mention, got a new thing we're working on, kind of like, if you remember, I'm sure you don't remember, but I used the Snow Runner, which is basically a snow bike. It's got treads on it. You can almost bike on it. On the Snow Runner I had, you couldn't, but it's gas powered. And you can go through. It's the size of a bike, and I used to run the dogs off leash. Well, we're working on an electric version of that where we can actually put the mushing bar on, because we're anticipating some snow today, as I said, and we've been having a snowy winter, which we haven't had in a few years. So stay tuned for that as I go through the Hard Rock Casino Cafe bridge as I mush under. Have a great day, everybody. Wolf Driver signing off. Thanks.